Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest updates from the world of sports, gambling, and pop culture. Because you can't have a show without hot takes or a Tiger King meme these days. Know what I'm saying? Now, with over 200 episodes and ready to get after it again, here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. We have a very interesting UFC pay-per-view on hand here with UFC 259, headlined by Israel Adesanya, moving up from middleweight to challenge for the light heavyweight title against Jan Blachowicz. And honestly, this is the most stacked card I've seen the UFC run in quite some time. Obviously, the pandemic affecting everything, but 15 fights, nothing called off in the Apex due to COVID restrictions. So gonna have a fully packed card and 3 title fights. So obviously Adesanya and Blachowicz are going on last. So this is going to be a very late night in terms of UFC action tonight. Gonna be interesting because, getting right down to it with the title fight, Adesanya moving up in weight class from middleweight to light heavyweight. Vegas has him as the, and not by a small margin. He's minus 235 in terms of the odds makers. I really have a tough time with this one, and I know Adesanya is a tremendous striker. But as well-rounded as Adesanya is on the feet, with his hands, he's world champion kickboxer. Like there's nothing about his striking that you can question. The question becomes, how much of an impact will that have in translating moving up in weight? Because obviously 185, 205, it's not that insignificant of a jump. There is a power difference when you get hit. And, the 205ers aren't really 205. They're really closer to 235, 240. Adesanya is, he's put on some muscle for this fight. He did weigh in a little bit higher than what people were expecting, but, he only weighed in at 202. He's still not at the 205 weight class. Like, he's not cutting weight. He's trying to build up muscle. I have reservations about that power translating as well. Yes, could he finish Blachowicz? Yeah, there's not like a question that he could finish him, but my issue is, can he take that much damage from Jan if Jan gets inside and starts landing body shots? What you saw with Blachowicz in the upset victory over Dominic Reyes to capture the light heavyweight title that was vacated by John Jones is Jan is very big for light heavyweight. Realistically, he's carrying around walking weight of 240 and cut down to 205. He's a big dude. The size advantage wise, he's gonna probably have once, obviously both guys made weight, but, once they get in after midnight, realistically, you're going to see Blachowicz probably come in around 225, 230 in terms of once he's fully rehydrated. Izzy may, like I said, could put on some pounds, but realistically, his walking weight inside the octagon, I'd be shocked if he was anywhere close to 210. I think that would probably be the max of him with his frame coming in without coming across as a little bit too bloated, once they kind of go through the training camp. But, I just don't – I have some questions about Izzy being able to stand up to taking some of the blows from Blachowicz. So, it's not that I don't think he can win the fight. I just have a big problem with taking odds at him minus 235. If it was like minus 150, minus 180, that's more manageable. That I could see it being a reasonable pick. When it's getting up to minus 235, that's where I kind of have to hit the brakes a bit and kind of question, what am I really getting here in terms of value? Because I just don't see Izzy being that prohibitive of a favorite where he's going to be getting the victory 7 out of 10 times. Realistically, if we're going to be paying that off in terms of value, I'm just not necessarily seeing that aspect of it. So it gets a little bit dicey for me, kind of going in that direction of taking Izzy in that fashion. So from my standpoint, the biggest thing is, what's the true valuation here of this play? And I just don't necessarily see Izzy paying off true value with the odds as they currently are. I would rather take Blachowicz as a dog at plus 180 than taking Izzy. And, even then, it's still not great odds on Blachowicz, but I do think if you're betting it to get some value, that's one way to go. And inside a distance is minus 180. I do think that this, 5-round fight, I don't think this goes to distance. I think they're striking, if Blachowicz gets a hold of Izzy and lands some good shots, I think he finishes Izzy. And if Izzy does get into a groove and starts peppering Blachowicz, I think Blachowicz slows down between somewhere in the championship rounds, and Izzy can finish him inside the distance. So I do think that inside the distance is probably the better way of going about this matchup here. All right, next up, we've got the women's bantamweight championship on the line, where Amanda Nunes is defending one of her titles at 145 pounds. She has the 135-pound belt at featherweight as well, against Megan Anderson. Yes, it's spelled Megan, but it is Megan Anderson. A huge underdog, and for good reason, because Megan Anderson's resume does not warrant an actual title shot. But interesting thing I learned in the research on this fight is that Megan Anderson is on the last fight of her current UFC contract, and given the fact that, it's been a little bit lackluster of a UFC career despite the hype, there's a possibility that she could, what she was signed at, she might get cut after this, or not cut, but just not re-signed. So it's very interesting that the UFC kind of fed her into this spot just to get an opponent in front of Nunes, because she's cleaned out both divisions pretty much. Realistically, there's no one left for Nunes to fight. She's already beaten Valentina Shevchenko twice. She's already beaten Cyborg. Obviously, Jermaine Durandamine, Holly Holm, like all these potential contenders. Like, no one even she's got wins over them. It's like there's no real surprise of what's going on. It's just kind of a case where you could call her the GOAT, and really hard to argue against it. There's just not much else to say. So, what it kind of comes down to at this point is, what else are we realistically going to be able to say for this fight? I mean, I just don't see any scenario where Megan Anderson competes in this one. Just being blunt. I think, overall, this is a pretty clear-cut case that Nunes either grinds her out or finishes her within the distance. Maybe there's some fluke chance that Megan Anderson gets a flash KO. There's a slip. Crazier things have happened. But at a minus 1,000 favorite for Nunes, I really just don't see any scenario where she's really getting clipped. But, if you were going to bet Megan Anderson, honestly, plus 650 isn't going to cut it. The way to, if you really wanted to do something with this fight, which I'm not going to do, but, you've already got Nunes at minus 1,000. Megan Anderson being able to win by knockout, which I think is the only way she's going to win. She's not going to win the decision. Point blank, Megan Anderson is not winning a decision over Amanda Nunes. It's got to be some scenario where she clips Nunes. Maybe she gets a sub because Nunes gets tired and she got clipped. Again, I just don't see it, but that's the only way. It's not going to be by decision because she's not going to be able to put up enough volume in terms of striking to actually do the damage against Nunes. It's just not. That's just not a scenario that's going to play out. All right, so that basically covers the aspect that I want to touch upon on this women's fight because I really don't see any, unless it's a fluke kind of stoppage. So, moving on to the fight that I really want to touch upon is Peter Yan defending against Aljamain Sterling, and this should be the best fight of the night in my opinion. I mean, I know Izzy's the headliner, but the Yan Sterling fight probably ends up being the go-to fight for most folks here. These are the two best bantamweights in the division, in my opinion. Sandhagen's right there, he's lurking, but Sterling got the win. Sterling's the best wrestler in the division. Yan may be the best striker in the division outside of Sandhagen. The question becomes, can Sterling get Yan to the ground and impose his will? Because Yan is going to be putting up punching volume. The way this just fight is just classic striker versus grappler. I'm curious if Peter Yan implements a strategy of using leg kicks, though, and calf kicks specifically. It's not necessarily what he would normally do, but I think against a fighter like Sterling, what we saw in the Cody Sandhagen fight is the fact that if you don't get Sterling off of you and you allow him to maintain range and then be able to shoot on you at will, it's just not a situation where you're going to be able to stop the takedown. And, the thing is, Sterling is going to shoot for takedowns in this fight. I don't think he's going to mess around with Yan standing up. I think he's going to try to stay out of pocket, use his range, and then shoot for takedowns as soon as he sees Yan try to set his feet and unload on a big punch. I think Yan is going to have to pump the jab quite a bit and keep Sterling honest with the jab and using leg kicks. So this is really going to be the interesting dynamic over a 5-round fight because I do think this one likely goes the distance. But I'm very much curious as to how both fighters approach this fight because I think, and the odds really do circle back to this one being a pick'em. I mean, slightly in the Yan, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up kind of a dead even kind of matchup just because it really is a 50-50 coin flip in my opinion. I don't think there's a clear advantage to either fighter. There are definitely pathways of victory for both that are attainable given their skill sets. But, if Yan can avoid the takedown, he should be able to find ways of getting there standing and outpointing Sterling in a 5-round fight. The problem is that I can see Sterling getting into the optimal position and just being able to take care of business against Yan. There really is a strong possibility of Yan getting stopped by Sterling. I don't necessarily see Yan stopping Sterling himself with strikes. Sterling really is. We saw him in the Sandhagen fight. He can take a hit. I just think that this is going to be a decision fight, and it just depends on which guy is able to execute their game plan to their benefit. And I think at the end of the day, you're probably going to see Jan just barely edge this one out by virtue of the champion's advantage. I'm not entirely certain that Sterling is going to be able to win enough rounds decisively in order to take the belt off of Jan. And I'm always a big proponent of you got to be able to beat the champ to do it, and you got to have 3 clear rounds by a decision victory. It was always my issue with the Volkanovski-Max Holloway fights, is that Volkanovski in neither fight did enough to win. The second fight's even more egregious than the first one, but that's a different story. But in this one, I really think Jan is going to be able to outpoint Sterling, but this should be a heck of a fight to witness. So again, 3 title fights, stack card. You got also a very fun fight between Alexander Rakic versus Thiago Santos. Santos coming off a loss to Glover Teixeira, but still very dangerous. Rakic, very powerful light heavyweight. We should see quite a bit of fireworks between these 2 fighters. So really interesting to watch in that one to see who's going to get a win there. I'm actually leaning a little bit more towards Santos as an underdog. Plus 120, I think, it's a pretty close fight, in my opinion. I wouldn't be betting Rakic at minus 150. I'd rather take Santos as an underdog because I think it is pretty much a pick-em fight. And then you've got, in one of the other matchups on the card, you've got Dominic Cruz returning to the octagon to face Casey Kenny. Cruz, very shaky looking in that matchup against Henry Cejudo. Kenny, just as fast a fighter. I'm very curious about how that one goes. I think Cruz can outpoint the matchup, but is he going to look dominant? Don't think so, but Cruz knows what he needs to do to get a W. So, definitely interesting fights on the main pay-per-view. So, going to be interesting to watch how it all pans out. But, in terms of betting side of things, I think, realistically, I like taking Blachowicz stance at plus 180. I think that makes more sense than anything else. And then you could do throwing it into a parlay with the likes of Islam Chimaev against Drew Dober. That should be fairly straightforward mismatch in favor of Makayev. So he's a minus 360 favorite. And I believe he should be able to finish inside the distance as well. But that's where I'm kind of leading. And then, like I said, I do like Thiago Santos as an underdog pick, and along with a couple other guys like Kyler Phillips. But definitely an interesting card, to say the least, on the pay-per-view tonight. So a good set of matchups to take a look at, but very much looking forward to this UFC pay-per-view. And like I said, this is a very stacked card, so we're going to see quite a bit going on, to say the least. So I'm going to get out of here, but enjoy the fights, everyone. Take care, and until next time, have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.